Hey guys, welcome back. So I hope you guys had a chance to look at the video that went over some of the secret recordings of the potential First Lady should the conservative presidential candidate Yoon Suk-yeol win the presidential election come this March, which is less than 2 months away. But just about 2 days afterwards, we had a blowback from the conservative side. They're like, okay, well, if you're gonna do a hit piece with all these secret recordings about our side, then you know what? F it. We're just gonna release all. Now, not just the limited recordings, all of the recordings of the liberal presidential candidate, Lee Jae-myung. And so we're gonna go over some of the juicy highlights that are not only shocking, but actually get to some of the more illegality and potential prison time for Mr. Lee. So whereas the recordings between Yoon Suk-yeol's wife was between herself and a reporter, these recordings were between Lee Jae-myung and his older brother, and Lee Jae-myung and his older brother's wife, so his sister-in-law. And this was from a period of time when they were in such family drama, and particularly during that time, remember when Lee Jae-myung was being accused of trying to lock up his own brother in a mental institution? And Lee Jae-myung had completely denied it, said he never done such a thing. Well, in these recordings, it definitely shows that he was trying to do it. They were bickering back and forth about that subject. Also, there's subjects about like a key figure right now in the land scandal that is currently locked up being questioned. He was the first guy talking, and he said, Lee Jae-myung said that, I don't know this guy basically just worked in my building. I don't know who he is. Like, yeah, maybe like you can see some pictures of us together, but he just like works in my building. But they are talking about him. And so I guess there's really no other way to kind of like go through this for me, other than for me to just go through the dialogue. I translated the script, and so I'll go through it. But if you were wondering, Lee Jae-myung right now says, because he was questioned right after he did an event for women's rights, and you could see he was shaking in his boots. I think he had gotten the tip off that this was happening because he went through this whole like kind of presentation, Q&A. All these girls were excited and women were excited about his policies or potential campaign pledges on how he's going to improve women's rights. And, you know, one girl was like, we need a protocol for something that, you know, when, you know, a sexual abuse happens. And, you know, looked like he was just like his mind was somewhere else. And then right after, he was supposed to do like a press conference probably talking about women's rights, but boom, they just went straight to, what about all of these new voice recordings that were released? Well, he said like, oh well, I'm really sorry about what happened, and this is old news. This is stuff that's already been released. Not quite. What was released was about 4 clips, and now there are close to 40 clips. 160 hours of recordings that were released to reporters. As far as I know right now, they haven't uploaded it publicly yet. But the 4 clips that were released before were blocked in Korea. Like, you can still have it circulate around globally on YouTube, but they were successfully able to get it blocked on YouTube Korea. And so that's why, you know, you can check it out on some of my previous videos. But, you know, they were able to block it there. And so the public had limited exposure to it. But now everybody in the country is talking about this, and even more because it is exposing him as a liar And not only that, as somebody just really vulgar and crass. And his brother has passed away. His mother has passed away. And they were basically the main topics of conversation in some of these recordings. So we're going to go over some of the highlights that'll just give you a bit of a, like an afternoon tea session of this big 160 hours worth of Lee Jae-myung gold. So the first highlight. This was after Lee Jae-myung called the cops because he was the mayor and he can do this. He called the cops on his own brother and sister-in-law after they fought over a family dinner and had them arrested and hauled in on trumped up charges and investigated. And then after I guess they went home, he called his sister-in-law and he said, he used the full curse words. So I'm going to replace them. So he's like, how'd the questioning go, you F&B? You crazy F&B? Why don't you record and release this too, F&B? I ain't here for you, B. Put my brother on the phone. That crazy F. And she was just like, please don't call us. I don't want to talk to you. Let's move on to highlight number 2. This was a conversation with his brother. Brother, how come you're calling me on someone else's number? It's all good. It's all good. Brother, now that you have all this power, you're just going to abuse me with it? What threats? I haven't given you any threats. You said you're going to commit me to a mental hospital. I just said, let's meet. You call me from midnight to 1 a.m. And what did you do to my son? Your effing son? Are you effing nuts? I was trying to teach him a lesson and I recorded what he was saying. So not only does he threaten the brother, the brother's wife, threatening now the son. And people take a lot of issue with that. Also, this is the older brother. So in Korea, that's also a huge deal that this guy is totally disrespecting his older brother. And especially in this generation, that's a big thing. Okay, highlight number 3. Conversation with the brother again. Brother, stop calling me and stop using someone else's phone. No, you punk. A, this is my phone. You're gonna go to jail. You're using burner phones, I know it. Send me to jail. Send me to jail, you dumb A. You just gonna make threats? You ain't a bee, so stop barking and try to bite me with your own teeth. Just wait. So, Korean people really did not like how he was using the phrase that referred to dogs, because in Korea, there is something about imagery and the words dogs that is a huge insult. So if you are throwing the words dogs and stuff like that into your cursing, that is very insulting. So that was brought up, particularly in this compendium of clips, as to show what level of class he is. Highlight number 4. Now this is where it starts to get into legal territory. Conversation with the brother again, who questions Lee Jae-myung's claim that he broke his arm. Because remember, part of the charm and allure of Lee Jae-myung is that, oh my god, he grew up in poverty, he worked so hard, he worked at a baseball glove factory where he injured his arm. All of the people who have to work under unfair working conditions and have no workers' comp, can relate to him. But the brother is like, dude, where'd you get that story? Because we know you didn't injure your arm that way. Where did you get that? You were doing other stuff when you were little because you were a little selfish little punk. You said you were holding a rag and broke your arm. What were you really doing? When did you break your arm? Look, you're recording me trying to lock me up in a mental hospital, but you're gonna come up 30% short, buddy. And I guess that referred to the amount of evidence. I guess there's a threshold that you need to prove. Now here's Lee Jae-myung. The medical director has decided to put you in though. And the basis is that I criticized the mayor? Are you really going to lock everyone up who criticizes you in a mental institution? Are you really a human rights lawyer? You sure have Yoo Dong-yu on your mind a lot. You're always thinking about Yoo Dong-yu. So first of all, he brings up, wow, you're a hypocrite because you're supposed to be this human rights lawyer. That's another part of his persona that Lee Jae-myung really rode up to political fame on, that he was there for the rights of the people, but then he's like taking away people's human rights by threatening to lock them up in mental institutions if you say bad things about him. Then his own brother knows that this is a trigger point for him, this figure of Yoo Dong-yu. So obviously there's like other parts of the life, like their situation going on right now that we are not privy to, but apparently there's like controversy over the land scandal, and this Yoo Dong-yu character is the thing that's creating like a buzz or like the tip-off that there might be something corrupt here. And so Yoo Dong-yu will get to in the next conversation because that becomes a lot clearer. But this is now like the smoking gun here in 2021. Or 2022 now. So he continues on this conversation. So now Lee Jae-myung says, now that he's threatened, he goes, you want to go to a mental institution then? I'm not gonna go to a mental hospital, you punk. I'm not a mental patient. You're utterly vulgar. I know, you're trying to manipulate this. I listened to the tape yesterday. There's a lack of evidence. Yeah, that's right. Little brother, Jae-myung. These are my last words to you. Get it together. You're trying to send your older brother to a mental institution? My wife said this the other day. You've been trying to get rid of me ever since you became a lawyer, right? Since 13 years ago? How did you know I wanted to kill you? I said, how did you know I wanted to kill you? Now, he didn't use the words like get rid of you. He literally said, how did you know that I wanted to kill you? You know, there's a thing called projection. I really do think that perhaps Lee Jae-myung is crying out for help. Maybe instead of the blue house, he wants to go to the nut house. So maybe we should do him a favor and vote for a different place to send him. Highlight number 5. This is the conversation with the brother again, and this time he is exposing now for all of us in 2022 that Lee Jae-myung lied about not knowing Yoo Dong-yu. Again, Yoo Dong-yu right now is locked up in jail being investigated for being a key person involved in the Daejang-dong land scandal. So that is the corruption scandal where basically they drained money out of the city of Seongnam, which Lee Jae-myung was the mayor of. Yoon Suk-yeol is accusing Lee Jae-myung of like basically using that money as the slush fund to become president, pay off bribes, and use it for campaign purposes. I mean, if you look at the campaigns, you compare the campaigns, like you'll see one campaign looks real slick, well-funded, much better funded than the rest, just saying. So just a little bit more on you. He was the acting president of the Seongnam Development Corporation, and he was accused of getting kickbacks anywhere from about $300,000 to a total of $2 million from various sources, and he's been in custody since October on various charges of bribery, breach of trust, and essentially he would be like one of the front men of making sure that the policies were in place to kind of start to divert funds. And instead of the regular laws where basically like profits would go back to the city, it would go to the right people, to the right channels that were all lined up to basically hide the corruption. And in December, though, he denied everything. But it looked like before then, because he was the first one to go in, it looked like perhaps he was beginning to cooperate. But then the other people that started to then get questioned and pulled in, they started to disappear. That's probably why now he's changing his tune in December. This dude, apparently, when they first hauled him in, he threw his phone out the window of his apartment when they came in and tried to, like, you know, grab all of his stuff for, like, investigation for evidence. The dude threw his phone out the window, and then apparently there was somebody else outside who grabbed it and then, like, ran off with it, but then they caught that guy, too. I mean, this is shady. Okay, so this is the conversation that proves that Lee Jae-myung knew this guy, and it wasn't just some guy who worked in his building, okay? So the brother. And one other thing, your wife graduated from Seongnam Women's College, right? She majored in music, so that's why you also hired Yoo Dong-yu? Because he's also a music major? How'd you know that? I mean, how'd you know that we picked him because he was a music major? So, well, that's one thing in Korea where people have some sort of affinity for the same major or college, you know, that you go to. Obviously, he didn't go to a women's college, but they might have connected over music or whatnot. But what this conversation totally shows is that Lee Jae-myung was very aware of Yoo Dong-yu. Not only that, Yoo Dong-yu had some connection with his wife, that they found an affinity together because of a connection over music or probably some sort of like roots or channels because of that. And so there is a lot more to this than somebody, you know, for him to say like, oh, I have no idea who this guy really is. I barely have met this guy or interacted with him. So totally exposed now that he is lying about this and has lied about definitely wanting to lock up his own brother in a mental institution. And then overall, in terms of his character, I think now Korean people can finally hear with their own ears what he sounds like and how he treats his older brother and family. And for Korean people, that is a very strong character assessment. Some people might not really think that that's a big deal. You argue with your family all the time, but to other people, especially in Korea, even if you have some sort of disagreement with your family, and especially if they are older than you, you would never ever speak to them this way. And let's say you lose your temper or like, you know, you kind of go off maybe once or twice. Maybe that's acceptable, but it's not 160 minutes worth that can be recorded. And it's definitely not where you call the police and you drag your own brother into jail. And it's definitely not you go through a whole campaign to try to lock your own brother up in a mental institution. That is beyond the pale where it's just losing your temper temporarily. So what do you guys think? Do you think there is something that you can forgive about this situation, or do you think this really shows who he is? I have some more to share that actually does show a little bit more about how he was when he was in his teenage years. So that'll be the next video. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you again next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.